As the war in Ukraine moves toward what some leaders describe as a decisive phase, Europe finds itself at a crossroads. Years of hardened positions, diplomatic freezes, and strategic isolation are beginning to soften under the weight of political reality. Against this backdrop, quiet signals from Moscow and Paris suggest that long-dormant lines of communication are cautiously being reactivated. The shift does not mark a dramatic breakthrough, but it reflects a growing recognition that Europe's future security architecture may depend on renewed dialogue rather than prolonged estrangement. The Kremlin has confirmed that Russia and France have re-established working-level diplomatic contacts, signaling a limited but notable change in relations between the two countries. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that while communication between officials has resumed, there are currently no plans for direct talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and French President Emmanuel Macron. According to Peskov, these renewed technical interactions are intended to maintain a functional channel that could facilitate higher-level engagement if circumstances demand it. However, he emphasized that Moscow has not received any formal indication that such top-tier discussions are being requested at this time. The confirmation from Moscow followed remarks by President Macron in an interview with Germany's Süddeutsche Zeitung, where he argued that continued efforts to politically isolate Russia have reached their limits. Macron suggested that as the conflict in Ukraine approaches a possible settlement phase, European states must reconsider their approach toward Moscow. He warned that excluding Russia entirely from diplomatic processes could diminish Europe's influence over outcomes that directly affect the continent's long-term stability. According to Macron, meaningful engagement is essential if Europe intends to retain agency in shaping its own political and security future. Kremlin welcomes the shift in tone. Responding to Macron's comments, Peskov indicated that Moscow views the resumption of dialogue positively, even in its limited form. He noted that global challenges of the current scale cannot be resolved in a climate of constant confrontation, and that the absence of communication has done little to ease tensions. Peskov added that while France has shown signs of recalibration, similar initiatives have not yet emerged from other Western governments that previously supported policies aimed at isolating Russia. He suggested that the lack of dialogue has hindered problem-solving rather than contributed to conflict resolution. Macron's remarks also touched on broader concerns regarding Europe's standing in international negotiations, particularly those mediated by the United States. He questioned whether European leaders should accept a future in which key decisions about Ukraine's trajectory, including its potential integration into European institutions, are determined primarily by external actors. By raising this issue, Macron underscored the importance of what he described as European self-respect, arguing that the European Union must assert its role rather than defer critical decisions to non-European intermediaries. Ukraine's EU aspirations and political stakes. At the center of these diplomatic recalculations lies Ukraine's ambition to secure a clear pathway toward European Union membership. Kiev is reportedly seeking to include a formal commitment to EU accession by 2027 as part of a peace framework being discussed under US mediation. Such an outcome would carry significant domestic implications for Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. With the country currently under martial law, the conclusion of hostilities would necessitate the scheduling of new presidential elections, potentially reshaping Ukraine's internal political landscape. Within the European Union, discussions are underway about the feasibility of Ukraine's rapid accession. According to reports cited by Politico, EU officials are examining the possibility of introducing a form of partial or provisional membership for candidate states that do not yet meet all accession criteria. This proposed model, sometimes described as membership light, would grant limited access to certain EU structures without full institutional integration. Sources indicate that some European leaders fear that rejecting Ukraine's bid outright could push Kiev to reconsider its alignment with the West. The debate over Ukraine's future within the EU is complicated by resistance from certain member states, most notably Hungary. Reports suggest that EU leadership is exploring procedural and political strategies to navigate or mitigate this opposition in order to maintain bloc unity while advancing negotiations with Ukraine. These internal divisions highlight the broader challenge facing the EU, balancing strategic solidarity with institutional standards, all while responding to shifting geopolitical realities. Despite the renewed contacts between Russia and France, officials on both sides have been careful to manage expectations. The resumption of communication remains confined to technical channels and does not indicate an immediate return to high-level diplomacy. Nonetheless, the development reflects a subtle but meaningful shift in tone. As the conflict in Ukraine evolves and Europe reassesses its diplomatic posture, the reopening of dialogue, however limited, signals an acknowledgement that enduring solutions may require engagement rather than exclusion.